Hello back on the Silk Road. Today we are in the capital of Kyrgyzstan called Bishkek. So we are really in the far north of Kyrgyzstan, close to the Kazakh border, and this city is really beautiful, situated next, or let's say in the outskirts of the Tian Shan mountain range, the highest mountain range with up to 5,000 meter high mountains. And this mountain range, one can say, is also the connects to the ancient Silk Road, because this city laid on one branch of the old Silk Roads, and there was in former times already a caravan stop with a caravanserai and so on. And then in the 19th century there was built a fortress to, let's say, to support this trading stop on this ancient Silk Road. And yeah, then the city was called Bishkek because the fortress, the Russian fortress, was called Bishkek. And then in the Soviet times, in the 1920s, the city was renamed to Frunze. After Mikhail Frunze, it was a close associate to Lenin, and let's say a good friend who supported him in the Russian revolutions in the beginning of the 20th century. And yes, this name, the city was called Frunze till the end of the Soviet Union, and yeah, then it was renamed again to the today's name Bishkek.
Yeah, and what is today Bishkek is the very center of what is the Kyrgyz identity nowadays. Kyrgyz identity behind us, you can see a lot of national monuments, especially behind Sebastian. You can see a monument with a man on a horseback. That's the famous Manas. Manas is the story about, it's a national myth of Kyrgyzstan, and it's the longest epos in entire human history. So that's a very big task the Kyrgyz people undertook in the last centuries in writing down their, let's say, their national story, their national myth. And back then, as Sebastian already said, Lenin was during the Soviet time the center of the identity, of course. But and where now the monument of Manas is standing, back then the monument of Lenin was standing. And after the fall of the Soviet Union, the monument of Manas came here. And today, nowadays, almost everything is called after Manas. A lot of streets, a lot of other places, several things. And what is really interesting is that also the airport of Bishkek is called after Manas. It's an airbase, and it's an airfield 20 kilometers to the north of Bishkek, and it became very important in the 2000 years during the US war in Afghanistan, because it was like the major logistics hub for the US troops to go to Afghanistan. And the US airbase ceased its being in 2014 after several incidents, and the Americans were not that welcome here anymore. But what is also really interesting is that not only the Americans were here in Bishkek for their military actions in Central Asia, especially Afghanistan, but also the Russians. In 2003 the Russians established their air base in Kant. It's 20 kilometers to the east of Bishkek, and so for about 11 years Bishkek was like a city where two big air bases from, let's say, two big conquering global powers were like almost really next to each other. So this is really showing that Bishkek is really a crucial and a very important place for entire Central Asia when it comes to geostrategy, geopolitics. Today Bishkek is a very modern city, very beautiful city, a lot of green, but you can still see the Soviet architecture in the city. And it was also a very important school for cadets, for military persons. For instance, the former president of Egypt, Hosni Mubarak, who was overthrown during the Arab Spring, was taught here as a pilot, a military pilot in Bishkek. And also the father of Bashar al-Assad, Hafiz al-Assad, was also in the same school. So Bishkek has a lot to offer, especially a very, very interesting and also like conflicting history, as well as a beautiful scenery. And it is now like our start point to the mountainous area of the Pamir. Sebastian already said the Tian Shan mountains, and afterwards we will go to the Pamir mountains and to Osh, to the Fergana valley. These mountains are called the roof of the world because they are the highest in the world, and we will hope we will see each other again. The internet will be not that good anymore, but we will still make it. We will make it at least until Osh, and we will come back when we are in Osh. And what is really interesting, between Bishkek and Osh, we will go to Narin, and we will tell you later more about what Narin is and why it is important, especially referring to the new Silk Road, to the Chinese actions in Kyrgyzstan. And so stay tuned, see you later on the Silk Road.